Hi everyone, my name is Wayne Jones. I'm the University Librarian here at Carleton. And welcome to another episode of Tell Me About Yourself with Erika Banski, who is the department head for cataloging, metadata, and digitization. And you were saying earlier that you came here from University of Alberta?
Yes.
And all those, the languages that you mentioned, which ones of those do you actually speak?
My mother tongue is Hungarian. I grew up in then Yugoslavia, so Serbo-Croatian, or now Serbian, is the official language, so I'm fluent in that language. And then I studied German because my mom, in fact, is German, so I did my university studies in German language and literature.
Wow.
And then I moved here, so learned English.
Learned English, yes, it's very handy.
Yes.
Can you carry on conversations in those languages to that extent?
Definitely.
Wow.
Even today, when I talk to my parents once a week on the phone, and I speak Hungarian to them, and my dad, even today, corrects my stylistic errors in Hungarian.
That's good. That means he's paying attention. That's a good thing.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about, as everyone knows who's watching this, we only recently changed the name of your department to those three words. So what was the rationale behind doing that? Was it that the previous title didn't quite cover it? There were old words there that don't apply anymore? What was the idea?
Yeah, so we used to be called Cataloging and Collection Maintenance. When I came here shortly after that, sometime I think in the summer, I started in March last year. In the summer, we started talking about this idea of digitization hub.
Right.
There were two pieces of equipment that were purchased with, I think, 2016 year-end money. One was the large scanner for large formats like posters and maps.
Right.
Then there was the printer plotter, so the opposite. If you have a large format file that is a map, a large size, you can print it out there. So that would be a working copy, for example, for a class if the original is brittle or in the rare collection.
Right.
So then in my collection, in my department, we already had the Curtis robotic arm scanner, which is used for transcription services, and we extended it to be used also for reserve scanning and ILL.
Yep.
And the fourth piece of equipment, which we acquired, I believe, early this year, was the BookNet scanner, which is a planetary scanner for material that cannot be handled by a robotic arm scanner, meaning it's either of different size than a book that would fit there, or it is too fragile,
right,
like special collections books.
So one would hold it and...
Yes, and then the planetary means the camera is on top.
It's on top.
So with all this going on, we decided to we have now two rooms. One is the actual digitization hub, and part of it is the scanning imaging room with the Curtis scanner, which has its own room because of the cooling system that needs to be there, and for blocking off noise because it's quite loud.
Right.
And then there was a team that worked already on scanning projects out of collections maintenance. Well, the unit name doesn't really indicate what they were working on.
Yeah.
So what I did is I think I brought forward this suggestion, and it was accepted that we will have a digitization hub, and that the digitization team members will work in the digitization hub. And we have team members even who come scanning from the geospatial data area from the first floor, such as Sherry, who is doing some of the maps.
Right.
So that's the digitization part. And then the other one, the metadata, we have been providing metadata for a long time now. Cataloging being just one type of metadata. Those are the traditional library metadata marked records. But then, of course, we support the Curve database where our electronic theses and dissertations are. That's another type of metadata. We have Artudis for our institutional repository,
Right.
which has its own set of Dublin core schema-based metadata. We provide DOIs for various publications of Carleton community members, and there's also Dataverse. So that's yet another type of data-specific schema that is used. So that's staff in our department are doing as much, if not more, other kind of metadata work than Mark.
Yeah. I have to say I was happy. Not only is that applicable, but I was happy to see that we do have metadata in the name because it really broadens it. Cataloging. It's a long tradition of that, and of course we still do that. It's still important. But it's good. It was good to see. I was happy to see metadata in the name of the group. That's great.
Yep.
That's good.
And actually, it went to a voting for our department. I first collected suggestions, what people might think of being the new name, and then it was sent out for voting. And we were between metadata and digitization department, or cataloging metadata and digitization, and then we ended up with the latter based on the number of votes.
Nice. That sounds. I like how pragmatic that is based on the number of votes, i.e., very democratically. That's very good. It's a good way to do it. What's your? Where did you get your library degree?
So I started my library career back in the former Yugoslavia. After finishing my bachelor's degree, I was hired by the state of Vojvodina, so it's a provincial level library, or state level library would be the equivalent, as a replacement first for, I think, maternity leave, and I was to work with French and German materials. French was my second language when I studied German. And after that, I got a permanent position in the bibliography of the province of Vojvodina. So if you think of Canadiana as, the bibliography of Canadian relevant materials authors, I was doing the same for Hungarian language in this library for Vojvodina.
Doing as in collecting or cataloging?
Well, we did a so-called third level cataloging, right, which is done for bibliographies where you actually go to the level of describing the actual copy that you have in hand.
Wow.
Which is done for rare books, and in this case it was done for the bibliography.
So very
of
detailed.
Vojvodina, and then the data were fed up so that the federal bibliography of Yugoslavia could be published annually, and from each province the metadata were fed up into the big database.
Very efficient, yes.
So I passed there. The requirements for librarians there is to pass certification, a state-level certification, which is done by the National Library. To become a librarian, you can do it after a year of practicing librarianship and before 5 years run out.
I see.
So it was about 8 exams and the written work.
Exams?
Yes.
Wow.
So when I came to Canada, I came in '93 when the war started happening in Yugoslavia. Of course, I first tried to find a position or apply for positions in a library, and of course my degree was not a real degree, and it was not ALA accredited.
The latter part is important, yes. Yeah.
So I went back and did my master's degree in applied German linguistics, teaching German at the University of Alberta. And after that, my choice was between doing my PhD in that area, or I was actually realizing I like libraries, so I went back and did my library degree at the University of Alberta.
Yeah, because they have a school there. Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah. Did you, while you were there, I know a lot of people, did you ever teach at the school once you had a degree and you were working there, or
Yes.
or appear at classes and that sort of thing?
Yes, I did guest lectures over a number of years. I did resist teaching the cataloging class because I was, as I mentioned already, I worked in 2 offices, I was in 2 departments. Cataloging was just 50% of my job.
Right.
When you're teaching in library school, the cataloging it was actually called bibliographic control, is the course.
I remember that.
It's a required course, and with the part-time students, it's about 40 students. So having office hours and working with 40 students over 12 weeks, I just couldn't see it, and I was tenure track at that point. At the U of A, it's 3 years.
Right.
And even after my tenure procedure and everything went well and I had a tenured position, it was still too much.
Yeah.
So I did guest lectures in cataloging e-resources. That was kind of at the dawn of internet resources.
The 90s, you mean, or the early 2000s?
Late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, that would have been very early. Yeah.
Yeah, and then taught a guest lecture on national bibliographies, and I don't even know, my regular annual lecture was this e-resources cataloging.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did a few workshops for the students.
Right.
And on the other hand, the students were coming on practicum assignments to the library, and we also had an internship program. So I mentored students in those programs and worked on some projects with them.
Right, right. Do you still have an interest in, like there used to be a time when you were a working cataloger, so to speak, or that was part of your job?
That was part of my job. In the first 10 years, I was monographs cataloging librarian. Then I took a year off and went to the United Nations in Vienna. Worked at the International Atomic Energy Agency's library.
Doing what?
I was a librarian, and I was their subject analyst and subject and classification analyst, I think was my title.
Wow.
And so I did that for a year.
Did you have access to the atomic buttons at that point?
No, just literature about them.
Okay. Ooh, good.
And it was interesting because that agency, the library was mostly about the peaceful use of atomic energy, which is in medicine, in agriculture.
Right.
And there was, of course, the non-proliferation, like all that literature about the nuclearizing and getting rid of nuclear weaponry and so on.
Right.
So it was very interesting to work with this type of material.
I imagine so, yeah. So you lived in New York City? You lived in New York?
In Vienna.
Oh, I see.
In Vienna, Austria.
Oh, okay.
That's where
was getting mixed up there.
the New York office is the largest.
Right.
Well, and then there's Geneva, of course, the center, but there are a few agencies in Vienna.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then coming back from there, the serials cataloging librarian, Kathy Carter, retired, or was working already half-time, getting close to retirement, and she trained me to step into her shoes, so I became a serials cataloger.
Mm-hmm.
And after her retirement, also the head of the bibliographic services, that was our cataloging department's name, within a few years she retired, and they did not replace that position right away, so I was acting head of serials cataloging, and my colleague in monographs was acting head of monographs.
I see. Right. Do you still have that? Pardon me?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Do you still have that sort of intensive interest in detail, the nitty-gritty details of things, or you're more interested more broadly in things? Do you still feel you have a head for it in a certain way, if you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I think once a cataloger, always a cataloger. But my interest with serials metadata is really in how metadata work when it comes to discovery of articles in specific journals.
Right.
So basically the metadata interoperability between all these knowledge bases where we have our e-journals holdings now. Ours is 360 Link, which used to be Serial Solutions. There's also I wanted to say it quickly, but it doesn't come to me. It's the Ex Libris product with X.
The link resolver, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, EBSCOs. There are some smaller ones. But that's one type of metadata. It has to work with the catalog through the OpenURL and the Easy Proxy system. But when you look at all the online databases that are either a subject-specific database or broader, like the arts and humanities databases, or the many in health sciences, or even the Modern Languages Association International Bibliography, which is in the arts. When you look at the metadata there, and where the user has to access the full text of the article, there are many moving pieces behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And if metadata are not interoperable, the user will not get to that full text article that your library is for.
I think that's not something I consider that almost a level. The classic thing when people talk about a change in libraries, they always talk about the card catalog. Oh, the 80s and 90s, and we got rid of the card catalog and moved to an online catalog, which was a major iconic shift for libraries. But this one too, because I and you have too, I've worked long enough in libraries to know, I remember an era where you had the online catalog, but for your specialty databases, no one even considered that it would be possible that you could search for articles in the same box for that. That would not, you'd have to go there somewhere else and go through each of them.
Right.
So this change where we're there, I guess, in a certain way, but everything is not perfected. But this change where basically in a single search, you can search all of that is ginormous, as the kids say. That's a massive, massive change in library discovery.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So there is this discovery system where in one search you can search across articles and streaming video, audio, or print, or any other physical format, and whether it's a book, a journal, or an article in the journal, or even a book reviewing a journal or an image.
Yep.
But what is even more fascinating to me is when somebody is searching an online database on their subject, and let's say the Linguistics and Language Behavior Abstracts, LLBA, and they find an article, and then what they can do is, if it's not linked there, full text in that database, they click on a Get It button. We love that Get It button, and then it links them through to our knowledge base, and that's where the metadata to each other based on the ISSN number, in this case, of the journal.
Yeah.
And what information comes from the knowledge base is, do we have that journal? Do we have it electronically or in print only? And then it brings, and do we have in our coverage the particular date that is in the article? So it's a lot of translation.
It's amazing if people only knew what clicking that little button, the machinery you need to have behind it to make that happen is quite astounding.
Right. It's very smart.
Yeah.
Of course, it needs to still be made better, because we are actually making metadata that come from the publishers work with metadata created by indexing vendors.
Yep.
work with metadata created by librarians in the catalog,
Right.
and then open URLs and easy proxy, which are two other kind of rainbows connecting them all.
I think in order to explain it, you need actually a third arm in there
That's
to
right.
see what's going on. Anyway, thanks for that, and thanks for being interviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Take
too.
care.